A powerful story unfolds when we imagine a scene where a homeless black boy shouts, "Don't drink that," to a wealthy billionaire, shocking everyone present and setting the stage for an unexpected turn of events. This moment is not just about the boy's words, but about the courage, compassion, and truth that emerge when someone least expected chooses to speak up. At first glance, the interaction seems strange. Why would a homeless child intervene in the life of someone so rich and powerful? Yet this interruption carries the weight of survival and urgency, making it clear that there is something deeper behind the warning. The boy's actions symbolize bravery because he risks ridicule, dismissal, or even punishment for daring to speak to someone of such high status. Still, he knows that staying silent could mean disaster, so he chooses courage over fear, highlighting the value of moral strength over social position. The billionaire, on the other hand, is caught completely off guard. She is accustomed to living in a world where people rarely question her or interrupt her choices, especially not a child who appears to have nothing. Her initial shock reflects not just surprise, but also disbelief that someone in such a vulnerable state would dare to intervene. But in that moment of confusion, something shifts inside her. She realizes that the boy's desperation is real, his warning urgent, and his presence impossible to ignore. This unexpected challenge forces her to look beyond appearances and status, pushing her to see humanity in a place she may have overlooked before. The shock is less about the words and more about the realization that wisdom, truth, and bravery can come from anywhere, even from those society often dismisses. The deeper layer of the story rests in the boy's knowledge and awareness. Perhaps he witnessed something dangerous being done to the drink, or he knows from his survival on the streets that things are not always as they seem. His experience, shaped by hardship, has given him a kind of vigilance and awareness that others in comfort often lack. While the billionaire may have all the wealth and power in the world, the boy carries insight born from struggle, and this becomes his strength. The situation highlights the idea that wisdom is not limited to education, privilege, or status. It often comes from lived experiences, resilience, and intuition. His shout is more than a warning. It is a call to pay attention to what society ignores, a reminder that those with little can still hold great value. As the story develops, the billionaire's reaction transforms from shock into gratitude. She realizes that her life may have been saved by a child most people would walk past without noticing. This moment of awakening serves as a powerful turning point, teaching her humility and respect for those she once may have underestimated. The boy's actions create a bond that cuts across wealth, race, and social barriers, proving that compassion and courage matter more than titles or possessions. Through this act, the billionaire learns that life is fragile and that everyone, no matter how rich or poor, holds the power to impact the lives of others. The lesson behind this speech lies in how society often judges people by their appearances, dismissing those in need or assuming they have nothing to offer. Yet this story proves the opposite, that sometimes the most important truths come from voices we least expect. It emphasizes listening, empathy, and humility, reminding us that greatness is not measured by wealth, but by the ability to recognize and value humanity in every individual. The homeless boy, with nothing material to his name, holds the power to change the life of the billionaire, not with money, but with courage and truth. This reversal of roles is what makes the story so powerful. It inspires us to look deeper, listen closer, and never underestimate the strength that can come from the most unlikely places. Courage is not always shown in battles or in front of big crowds. Sometimes it is revealed in the smallest but most powerful moments, such as a homeless boy daring to speak up in front of someone who holds all the wealth and authority. In this story, the boy's act of shouting, "Don't drink that," becomes a symbol of bravery that goes far beyond his situation. He has nothing to gain and everything to lose, yet he chooses to raise his voice in a place where he could easily be silenced or ignored. This shows that true courage is not measured by strength, money, or social power, but by the willingness to do what is right even when the odds are stacked against you. The boy stands at the very bottom of society, living in conditions most people could never imagine. He knows how it feels to be invisible, to be treated as if his voice does not matter. Despite this, he finds the strength to break that silence, To shout a warning in front of a billionaire takes more than just concern. It takes extraordinary courage. He risks being ridiculed, dismissed, or even punished for disrupting an elite moment, yet he prioritizes saving a life over his own fears. For this decision reflects the kind of bravery that is deeply human, rooted in compassion rather than self-interest. His act is especially powerful because it challenges the social divide. A homeless boy and a billionaire exist in two completely different worlds, yet in that single moment his courage creates a bridge between them. Wealth often creates a barrier where the voices of the poor are unheard, but the boy's loud, urgent cry breaks through that wall. It forces the billionaire to look beyond status and see the humanity in someone society would usually ignore. That act alone shows how courage has the power to bring equality, even if only for a moment, because it puts truth in life above all else. The situation also reminds us that courage often requires sacrifice. The boy could have stayed quiet and avoided drawing attention to himself. He could have convinced himself that no one would believe him, or that it wasn't his problem. But courage means stepping into discomfort, and he chooses to carry the burden of responsibility even when he is already carrying the weight of homelessness and hardship. His action shows that bravery often comes from those who have suffered the most, because pain teaches the value of life in ways privilege cannot. This moment also carries a deeper message for anyone watching or listening to such a story. Courage is contagious. When someone as vulnerable as a homeless child stands up against power to do the right thing, it inspires others to reflect on their own fears. If someone with so little security can be so brave, then what excuse do the rest of us have for staying silent in the face of wrong or danger? The boy's shout is not just a warning to the billionaire. It is also a challenge to the world to remember that courage belongs to everyone, regardless of their background. Finally, his act of courage transforms how the billionaire sees the world. Instead of viewing the boy as just another homeless child, she is forced to recognize his value, his strength, and his humanity. That shock becomes the first step in breaking down her own pride and learning humility. Without courage, this encounter would have never happened, and the opportunity for growth would have been lost. In this way, the boy's bravery not only saves a life, but also sparks a change that goes far beyond the immediate moment. Compassion is one of the deepest qualities of humanity, and in the story of the homeless black boy shouting, "Don't drink that," it becomes clear that compassion can come from the most unexpected places. Despite his own suffering, hunger, and daily struggles for survival, the boy still finds room in his heart to care about someone else's life. He does not know the billionaire personally. He has no obligation to protect her, and she lives in a world completely different from his own. Yet, when he sees danger, his instinct is to save rather than to remain silent. This act shows that compassion is not about wealth, status, or comfort, but about the simple, selfless willingness to care for another human being. The boy's compassion becomes even more powerful when we consider his circumstances. Many people in his position might be bitter toward the wealthy, feeling abandoned, ignored, or treated unfairly by society. It would be easy for him to look at the billionaire and feel that she deserves whatever happens, because her life seems filled with privilege while his is defined by struggle. But true compassion does not discriminate. Instead of letting anger or resentment control him, he chooses empathy, valuing her life just as much as his own. This ability to look beyond resentment shows the strength of his character and the depth of his humanity. Another important aspect of his compassion is that it is proactive. He does not wait to be asked, and he does not hesitate. Compassion is often not about quiet feelings, but about bold actions. The boy immediately shouts out a warning, even though it draws attention to him and risks making him a target of ridicule or dismissal. He chooses to act because he cannot stand by while another human being suffers. This reveals that compassion is not passive but active, requiring courage and decisiveness. His heart compels him to intervene, and in doing so, he proves that compassion is most meaningful when it is backed by action. Compassion also creates a bridge of connection in this story. The boy's concern for the billionaire breaks through the invisible walls of social and economic class. Normally, she would never listen to him, and people in her circle would likely dismiss his voice. But compassion has the ability to make even the most powerful pause and listen. In that moment, The billionaire realizes that kindness can come from someone society often overlooks, and she is confronted with the reality that value is not defined by wealth. This moment of shared humanity transforms the dynamic between them, reminding us that compassion can dissolve barriers and remind us of our equality as human beings. The boy's compassion also reflects an important truth. Those who suffer the most often develop the strongest sense of empathy. Living without shelter, food, or safety can make a person numb, but for some, it also makes them more sensitive to the pain of others. The boy knows what it feels like to be in danger, to be neglected, and to be forgotten. When he sees someone else at risk, his own experiences fuel his desire to protect them. Instead of turning cold, he allows his hardships to shape him into someone who cares even more deeply. His compassion shows that suffering does not have to destroy kindness. It can strengthen it. Finally, his compassion carries a ripple effect. Not only does he save the billionaire in that moment, but he also opens her heart to a new perspective. She might have gone through life believing that wealth separates her from the struggles of others, but this encounter proves otherwise. The compassion of the boy forces her to reflect on her own values and how she views those less fortunate. It plants a seed of humility and gratitude, reminding her that sometimes the greatest gifts in life come from the people we least expect. In this way, the boy's act of compassion extends beyond a single moment and begins to inspire change in someone who has the power to influence many others. Courage is one of the most defining qualities of the homeless boy's act in this story. To shout in a public place, to stop a billionaire, and to call out a warning that might seem absurd to others takes immense bravery. He is a child, vulnerable, and without protection, yet he decides to raise his voice despite knowing he could be ignored, mocked, or even punished. This kind of courage is not born from privilege or confidence in being respected. It comes from the raw instinct to do what is right, even at great personal risk. Many adults would hesitate before speaking up, fearing embarrassment or backlash, but the boy does not let fear silence him. His courage shows that real strength is not about physical power or status, but about having the heart to act when others stay quiet. What makes his courage even more powerful is the fact that he is already living in difficult circumstances. As a homeless child, he is used to being overlooked, treated as invisible, and sometimes even as a nuisance. Society has conditioned him to believe that his words may not carry weight, yet in this moment he refuses to accept that. He believes that his voice matters enough to stop a dangerous action, and he raises it with conviction. That choice reflects a courage not just of action, but of belief in himself. It shows that even those who are dismissed by society can find strength within to stand up and be heard when it truly matters. Courage also carries with it the element of sacrifice. By shouting out, the boy risks drawing unwanted attention to himself. People could accuse him of lying, interrupting, or trying to cause a scene. The billionaire herself could have reacted negatively, offended that someone from the streets dared to interfere in her life. But true courage is willing to face consequences for the sake of a greater good. The boy's decision shows that he values another person's life above his own comfort, a rare quality that makes his bravery even more admirable. It is not easy to risk humiliation when you already carry the weight of poverty, but he chooses to take that risk anyway. This courage also reveals something about the resilience of the human spirit. Despite living in an environment that could crush his confidence, he still finds the strength to act boldly. Life on the streets might have taught him to be cautious and invisible, yet here he does the opposite. He steps into the light and makes himself seen. Courage often comes from a place of pain, where people learn that they have nothing left to lose. But for the boy, it comes from a deeper place of humanity. He has everything to lose because his dignity and survival are fragile, but he still steps forward. His courage is therefore not just physical, but deeply emotional, a determination not to let fear dictate his choices. The boy's courage also has an inspiring impact on the billionaire. She is someone used to commanding respect, making decisions, and being in control. Yet in this moment, she sees a child with nothing stand up and risk everything to protect her. That contrast is humbling. It forces her to question whether she herself would have acted as bravely if the roles were reversed. Would she have shouted out to save a homeless child if she saw danger? His courage challenges her to reflect on her own character. And in doing so, it begins to shift her perspective about what true strength looks like. It is not wealth, titles, or power, but the willingness to act when no one else will. Finally, the boy's courage reminds us of the universal truth that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power. His act may have seemed insignificant at first glance, just a child shouting in a crowd, but it changes everything. He prevents harm, teaches a lesson, and leaves a lasting impression on someone who may have never expected to learn from him. Courage is often contagious, and his bravery could inspire others to step forward in their own lives when they see injustice or danger. In the end, his courage proves that even the most vulnerable can make the most profound impact simply by refusing to remain silent. The warning shouted by the homeless boy is more than just words. It carries the weight of life and death. In that moment, his intervention has the potential to save the billionaire from harm, and this becomes the turning point that shows how one act of compassion can change everything. The boy could have stayed quiet, telling himself that it was not his problem, but instead he chose to care about someone far removed from his world. That choice reflects the power of kindness, the idea that even the smallest gestures can have the greatest impact. By warning her, he demonstrates that human connection can rise above the barriers of wealth, race, and status, and that genuine concern for another life does not require privilege. What makes this act even more powerful is that the boy himself has so little. Living without a home, without security, and often without kindness directed toward him, he could have turned bitter or indifferent. Yet in this moment, he chooses to act out of love and care for a stranger. That is what makes kindness transformative. It does not depend on how much you have, but on how much you are willing to give. The boy gives the only thing he has to offer, his voice and his courage, and that offering becomes priceless because it saves someone from potential harm. It is a reminder that kindness does not need wealth or resources. It only needs the willingness to step outside of yourself and see the value in another's life. The impact of his warning goes far beyond the immediate danger. For the billionaire, it is not only shocking but also humbling. She is used to being in control, surrounded by advisors, security, and people who cater to her needs. Yet none of them stopped her in this critical moment. Only a homeless boy did. This reversal of roles shows her that true care often comes from unexpected places. It shakes her belief that protection only comes from those who are paid to provide it, and instead teaches her that sometimes the most genuine help comes from those who have no reason to offer it except for the goodness of their heart. The boy's act also reveals the deeper ripple effect of kindness. By saving her, he not only protects her life, but also shifts her perspective about people like him. A billionaire might normally walk past a homeless child without giving them a second thought, but now she cannot ignore the reality that this child valued her life enough to protect it. That realization may inspire her to treat others with more compassion, to reconsider her views on poverty, or even to take action to help those in need. Or one act of kindness can plant seeds that grow into lasting change, both for the person who received it and for society at large. Kindness also carries with it a sense of accountability. The boy did not know how she would react, but he could not bear the thought of staying silent and letting harm occur. His act shows that kindness is not passive. It requires responsibility and courage. When you see someone in danger, kindness compels you to intervene, even if it is uncomfortable or risky. This kind of kindness is active and selfless, not waiting for reward, but driven by the belief that every life matters. It is easy to say you care about people, but the boy proved it through action, which is the highest form of kindness. Finally, the life-saving impact of this act reminds us that kindness has the power to cross divides that otherwise seem insurmountable. A homeless child and a billionaire exist in two completely different worlds, yet in that moment, they are connected by something deeply human, the instinct to protect one another. The boy's warning bridges the gap between wealth and poverty, power and vulnerability, showing that compassion is the thread that unites us all. The billionaire may have resources the boy will never see, but in that moment, she is indebted to him in a way no money can repay. His kindness teaches her, and all who witness the story, that life's most important lessons often come from those who have the least, but give the most humility. is one of the most powerful lessons hidden in the story of the homeless boy warning the billionaire. When the billionaire freezes in shock after hearing the boy shout, she is not just reacting to the danger being revealed, but also to the realization that someone she would normally ignore or look down upon has become the one to save her. This reversal of roles forces her to confront her own assumptions about worth, power, and importance. Society often teaches people to value others based on wealth, appearance, or status. But in this moment, those labels crumble. The boy proves that value cannot be measured in money or position, and that wisdom, dignity, and courage can come from anyone. The billionaire is humbled because she realizes that she was vulnerable and unaware, while the boy, who supposedly had nothing, was the one who carried knowledge that could protect her. That lesson is uncomfortable because it flips the hierarchy she is used to. In her world, she commands respect and makes decisions, yet here she must admit that her life was saved by a child who sleeps on the streets. That realization brings a new understanding of equality. It forces her to see that all humans, regardless of their circumstances, deserve to be respected because everyone has something valuable to contribute. This moment also highlights the danger of underestimation. The boy might have been dismissed as insignificant, yet he held the power to alter the course of events. Many people overlook those who are struggling, assuming they cannot offer anything meaningful, but this story proves otherwise. The billionaire's shock is not just about the warning itself, but about the truth it reveals, that her own privilege blinded her to the humanity of those she considered beneath her. Humility comes when we are forced to admit that our assumptions were wrong, and in this case, the boy became her teacher in a lesson she would never forget. There is also a spiritual depth to this idea of humility. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the least expected places, and this story mirrors that truth. The billionaire might have had access to doctors, advisors, or guards, yet none of them protected her in that moment. Instead, it was a homeless child. This teaches her that she cannot rely solely on wealth or power to shield her from life's dangers. True safety, wisdom, and kindness can appear in the most unlikely forms, and that realization requires a lowering of pride. Humility grows when people recognize that they are not as self-sufficient as they once believed, and that others, even those with nothing, can play a vital role in their lives. The boy's act also creates a permanent change in perspective. Once humbled, the billionaire can no longer see the world in the same way. She may begin to treat others with more respect, offer help where she once turned away, and listen to voices she previously ignored. The boy's courage and warning plant a seed of humility that could transform her into a more compassionate and understanding person. The moment becomes not only about saving her life, but about awakening her to a truth she had forgotten, that every life is equal, and that no one should be judged solely by circumstances. Finally, this story carries a universal reminder that humility is the foundation of true humanity. It shows us that no matter how high we climb in wealth, power, or status, we must never forget that wisdom and value exist in everyone. The billionaire's shock becomes symbolic of what happens when we are forced to face the limits of pride and privilege. She learns that greatness is not about domination or wealth, but about recognizing and honoring the worth of every individual. In the end, the homeless boy teaches her a priceless lesson. Humility is not weakness but strength, because it allows us to see clearly, to respect deeply, and to connect genuinely with others beyond the illusions of status and wealth.